Okay, so in this part of the solving equation, we are still doing the solving, but right now, the solving will happen in fraction. That means you will see fraction, your x is somehow somewhere in the fraction. So the method will still be the same, the generic method of like add something on both sides, minus something on both sides, multiply something on both sides, and divide something on both sides. It will still be the same method, but you add on one more method called cross multiplication. Okay, so I'm going to explain to you the cross multiplication method. So this method only works when there is a one fraction equal to one fraction. It will only work when there's one fraction equal to one fraction. So to illustrate that, I'm going to use the star and the moon. So this is one fraction. And then I'm going to use a square and a triangle. So it will be valid only when you got one fraction equal to one fraction. And when we say cross multiply, right, okay, it's just this, the star will multiply with the moon. Sorry, the star will multiply with the triangle. That means you cross over and then you multiply. So when we say cross multiply, literally, you cross over, then you multiply. So that's it. That's actually the idea of cross multiply. After the the idea of cross multiply, right? Then you go back to you add something on both sides, or you minus something on both sides, you multiply something on both sides, you divide something on both sides. But of course, you may need to expand first. You expand, then you do all this. Your objective is still 1x. So we are kind of adding on. So previously you already learned, expand already, then you do all the steps, all the basic method. So now we're going to cross multiply, then expand, then all the basic method. Your objective stays the same. Okay, so you must understand the idea of cross multiply. So in this case, right, if you look at part A, you got one fraction equal to one fraction. Can see? So this one is one fraction, this one is another fraction. So you can cross and multiply. So I'm going to cross and multiply. So when I cross and multiply for the 7, I get a bracket. Okay, then 5 times 1 is just a 5. So after I cross multiply, I do the idea that you learned just now in the previous example. You expand first. After you expand, you go back to the adding or whatever that you will need to do. So I'm going to add 14 on both sides. So this one will disappear. And remember, your objective is 1x. So I'm going to divide by x. Divide by 21. So my x is 19 over 21. Okay, so that is the idea of cross multiply. And it works only for one fraction equal to one fraction. Maybe you'll be thinking, then what if there are two fractions? So later on, there will come to such thing. Okay, so in part B, we got a fraction minus a fraction. And in the end, it ends up equal to a 0. So actually what you can do is, we can shift the fraction to the other side. I can add a fraction on both sides. I can add a fraction on both sides. Then this will disappear. Okay, so I can add a fraction on both sides and that will disappear. Okay, I need to save some space, so I'm going to erase this one. So you add a 2/3 on both sides. So the whole thing will become one fraction equal to one fraction. And then you cross multiply this whole thing, cross with the 3. Then you multiply it with a bracket. So this you multiply 6 times 2, 12. Okay, then you go back to your expansion method. You expand. Then you can choose to add something on both sides now. So no more bracket. So you choose to add something on both sides. So this will be a 0. So when you got 6x equal to 39, remember your objective is 1x. So I divide by 6. And don't forget, you can always reduce a fraction. Okay, so fraction equal to a fraction, you kind of cross and you multiply. Literally cross and multiply. Some people cannot execute this. You cross over and multiply, not straight over. You don't do a numerator times numerator, no. You cross down. From the top, you cross down, then you multiply. Okay, so in the next one, you'll find, okay, how am I going to do a cross multiply? And there's a bracket. Okay, so if you want to, you can expand out the bracket first. So by now, the expansion of a bracket should be quite easy. So you can only cross multiply when it's a fraction equal to a fraction. But right now, you only see a fraction. So what about the 8? So if you still remember, it's actually an invisible denominator. So if you still remember, it's an invisible denominator, then I can cross and multiply. So when you cross and multiply, remember to bracket the denominator in this case. And then the other side will be 4 times 1. Okay, so you expand out first. Okay, remember your objective is to isolate the x. So I'm going to minus 48 on both sides. So I'm going to minus 48 on both sides. So this part will disappear. So I get a minus 44. And then you bear in mind, you always wanted your 1x. So you divide by 24. Divide by 24 and reduce the fraction. So that's it. Okay. So actually, this cross multiplication is the basic that you need to know for fraction algebra. So next year, you're going to do something more. Okay, so next year, the Sec 2 are actually doing the more difficult version of this. Okay, so next in part D, you see fraction equal to fraction. So you can cross with a bracket if there is an algebra. Cross the other side with a bracket. So both sides got bracket. Okay, not to worry, you already learned it, correct? So you got to expand both sides. And both sides contain x. So it doesn't matter. You subtract 6x from both sides. So this part will disappear. So all the x will end up eventually on the left side. So 12x minus 6x will be a 6x. Then you plus 3 on both sides. And don't forget your objective is 1x. So you divide by 6 on both sides. And then make sure you remember to reduce it. So can you see how it layer up and then become very long question? Okay, so cross multiply, expand, and do your basic method of adding or minus or multiply or divide on both sides. Your objective stays as 1x. Okay, so remember the cross multiplication can only be done when one fraction equal to one fraction. In the next one, you're gonna see that you got a fraction equal to a fraction, but then there's an additional thing hindering you. Okay, so before I go on to this question, please cancel away the x in the denominator. In set 1, your denominator shouldn't contain x. So in set 1, your denominator shouldn't contain x. Set 1 will happen in set 2. Okay, so do you realize that on the left side, you got one fraction, but on the right side, you actually got two things. So you got to kind of marry the two things. So you learn it in one of the previous algebra. You need to make same denominator. So you need to make same denominator. Then you can have one fraction. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So the fraction on the left, I'm going to ignore it. So the fraction on the right, I try to combine them. So in order to combine, I need to see 2 as 2 over 1. So I need to make same denominator on the right side. So once I achieve the same denominator, then I can add the numerator. So add them up. Maybe now you can already mentor and add them up. So one fraction equal to one fraction. Now I can cross multiply. Cross down. Cross down. So both sides got bracket. Okay, expand out. Both sides got x. So both sides got x. So I'm going to do a plus 10x on both sides. So this part will disappear. And this part will give me a minus 2x. Then I'm going to minus 8 on both sides. So these will disappear. And don't forget, your objective is 1x. Okay, maybe I write here. So your objective is 1x. So just divide by minus 2. So you will get a minus 5. Yeah, I agree it's very, very long. But the steps are going to be the same. So it's just that we keep stacking up. Okay, the last one, a lot of people will also get confused because you got 1 minus a fraction equal to 2/3. Okay, so you got 1 minus a fraction equal to 2/3. We can make same denominator. Yeah, you can make same denominator. Okay, but the making of same denominator will be a bit difficult because you for set 1 you will find that when you got algebra in the denominator, it's actually difficult. So what I will suggest is, okay, instead of doing this, right, I will suggest that you minus 1 on both sides. You minus 1 on both sides. because 1 minus 1 will disappear. So you left with a minus. You left with a minus 1/3. So if both sides have a negative, you can think about dividing by a -1. The whole fraction divide by a -1. Then your fraction ends up a lot simpler. A lot simpler for you to cross multiply. Then you go to the adding the same number on both sides. So I'm add a 2 on both sides. So that's my answer. So the method doesn't change. Do you realize I keep doing the same technique? I add something both sides, I minus something on both sides, I divide something both sides. But you got to look according to your equation. And objectively is 1x at the end. So I will say the make same denominator equal to one fraction is a bit more difficult. You need to make same denominator one fraction so that you eventually get to the cross multiply. And then you got to do a lot of steps. So a simple strategy can build up to a very long method. So this is one of the technically more challenging kind of question. And because the method can be very long, some of you, right, will have a lot of chance of making careless mistake. Okay, so this part is one of the challenge for the algebra solving.